The sun blazed high in the clear blue sky, turning the summer day into a scorcher. The pool area at Riverside Apartments buzzed with weekend activity. Kids splashed in the shallow end while adults lounged on chairs, soaking up the sunshine. The water sparkled like diamonds under the bright sunlight, offering sweet relief from the heat. Among the crowd stood a man in his mid-30s at the edge of the pool. He wore simple khaki shorts and a plain blue t-shirt that had seen better days. Nothing about him screamed wealthy or important, just an ordinary guy with a clipboard, writing things down as he walked slowly around the pool area. His dark skin glistened with sweat in the afternoon heat as he paused to check the new lounge chairs, making small notes on his paper. What nobody at the pool knew was that this man owned the entire place, all 200 luxury apartments, the sparkling pool, the fancy gym, and the beautifully landscaped grounds. He had built his real estate business from nothing, starting with a tiny rundown house he fixed up himself after working double shifts. Now he owned several properties across town, with Riverside being his newest and proudest achievement. He liked to visit his properties regularly, especially on weekends when he could see residents enjoying the amenities. He believed good owners should know what was happening on their properties firsthand, not just from reports. Today he was checking if the new pool furniture had arrived and been set up correctly. Across the pool deck sat a woman in her 40s, with blonde highlights and designer sunglasses perched on her nose. She had moved in just 3 weeks ago and already appointed herself as unofficial pool monitor. She noticed the man with the clipboard immediately, someone she hadn't seen at any resident meetings or pool gatherings before. She leaned toward her friend sitting next to her. "Look at that guy over there," she whispered loudly, nodding in his direction. "I've never seen him here before. He's probably not even a resident." Her friend shrugged, too busy enjoying her magazine. "Maybe he's new or visiting someone." "No way," the woman insisted, pushing her sunglasses up into her hair. "I know everyone who's moved in recently. The leasing office sends welcome emails, and visitors are supposed to be with residents." She watched him for another minute, growing more annoyed as he continued making notes on his clipboard. "Someone needs to check if he belongs here," she muttered, setting down her iced tea with a sharp clink. "This is a private community. We pay good money to live here." Her friend looked uncomfortable. "Maybe just leave it alone? He's not bothering anyone." "That's how neighborhoods go downhill," the woman said firmly. "People let things slide." "Next thing you know, strangers are using our facilities and making our home values drop." She stood up, straightening her designer swimsuit cover-up. Several people nearby watched curiously as she marched across the hot concrete, her fancy sandals slapping against her heels. The man was so focused on checking the stability of a lounge chair that he didn't notice her approach until she cleared her throat loudly. "Excuse me?" she called out sharply, her voice carried across the suddenly quieter pool area. "This pool is for residents only." The man looked up from his clipboard, surprise crossing his face at being addressed so bluntly. "I'm going to need to see your key card," she continued, crossing her arms over her chest, "or you'll have to leave immediately." The man blinked, processing her demand. His expression remained calm, though his grip tightened slightly on his clipboard. This wasn't the first time someone had questioned whether he belonged somewhere. "I'm sorry," he started to explain politely. "I actually don't have my card with me right now because I—" "That's exactly the problem," she interrupted, her voice growing louder. People around the pool were now openly staring. Some parents called their children closer to them. "The rules clearly state all residents must have their key cards. If you're visiting someone, they need to be here with you." A teenage boy nearby slipped his phone out and began recording, sensing drama unfolding. "Ma'am," the man said calmly, setting his clipboard down on a nearby table. "There seems to be a misunderstanding. I was just—" "No," she cut him off again, pulling out her own phone. "There's no misunderstanding. I'm on the resident committee. We were specifically told to report trespassers. This is a private community." More people had stopped swimming and sunbathing to watch. An uncomfortable tension spread across the pool area. A couple whispered to each other, the woman shaking her head disapprovingly. "If you don't leave right now," the blonde woman threatened, "I'm calling security. I don't know how you got in here, but this pool is for paying residents only." Man took a deep breath and squared his shoulders. He'd faced situations like this before. Sometimes he handled them with humor, sometimes with education, sometimes just by walking away. Today he couldn't simply walk away. He had work to do. "I understand your concern for security," he said in a measured voice. "That's actually something I care about too. But I think there's been a—" "Security!" the woman called out loudly toward the apartment office, not letting him finish. She raised her phone, thumb hovering over the emergency call button. "We have an unauthorized person refusing to leave the pool area." Several uncomfortable residents shifted in their chairs. An older man looked like he might intervene, then thought better of it. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. What happened next would soon become the talk of the entire apartment complex. The woman's sharp voice rang out across the pool area as more heads turned to watch the scene unfolding. "Security! We have an unauthorized person refusing to leave." The man with the clipboard sighed, his shoulders tensing slightly. This was supposed to be a quick 15-minute check of the new pool furniture before heading to his daughter's soccer game. Now it was turning into something else entirely. "Look," he said, trying again with remarkable patience. "I understand you're concerned about pool safety. That's actually a good thing. But if you'd just let me explain—" "I don't need explanations," the woman cut him off, her voice rising. "I need you to follow the rules like everyone else has to." She gestured dramatically around the pool area. "All these people had to prove they live here. They pay thousands in rent for these amenities." By now, at least 20 people were openly watching. The atmosphere had grown thick with tension. Some parents were gathering their children's toys, clearly uncomfortable with the confrontation. Others were openly recording with their phones. "People like you always think the rules don't apply," she continued, her words coming faster now. "I've lived in luxury communities for 15 years. Security is the most important thing. Without it, anyone could just walk in off the street." The man noticed a young family quietly packing up their pool toys, the parents exchanging whispers, as they hustled their confused children away from the scene. Their discomfort was obvious, and it bothered him more than the woman's accusations. "Ma'am," he said, his voice still level but with a new firmness to it. "You're causing a scene that's making people uncomfortable." "I'm not trying to break any rules. I'm causing a scene?" She laughed sharply. "You're the one who doesn't belong here and won't leave when asked." An older gentleman in swim trunks and a faded t-shirt stood up from his lounge chair nearby. "Maybe we should all calm down," he suggested, looking uncomfortably between them. "It's a hot day, tempers are high." "Stay out of this," the woman snapped without looking at him. "I'm handling a security issue." She turned back to the man with the clipboard. "You have exactly 1 minute to leave before I call the actual police." The older gentleman raised his hands in surrender and sat back down, shaking his head. "This is ridiculous," a teenage girl whispered loudly to her friend. Both were sitting at the edge of the pool, their feet dangling in the water. "She's being so extra." The woman spun toward the teens. "This is exactly what's wrong with your generation. No respect for safety or private property." The man with the clipboard took advantage of her distraction to pull his phone from his pocket. He quickly scrolled through his contacts while she continued lecturing the teenagers. "You think safety isn't important? What if he was here to steal from the locker rooms or worse?" the woman was saying. "I've seen communities go downhill in months when they stop enforcing security." A few people began murmuring among themselves. Some looked embarrassed by her behavior, while others seemed to be considering her points. The community had experienced some minor thefts the previous month, someone's package and a bicycle from the rack outside. "I pay $3,000 a month to live in a secure building," she continued, growing more confident as she addressed the crowd. "We all agreed to the rules when we signed our leases." The man looked up from his phone. "I didn't sign a lease," he said quietly. That caught her attention. She whirled back toward him, her eyes widening behind her designer sunglasses. "Excuse me? So you admit you don't even live here?" Her voice was triumphant, as though she'd just won her case in court. "That's not what I said," he replied evenly. "I said I didn't sign a lease, but I do have every right to be here." "Unbelievable," she huffed. She jabbed a finger toward the exit gate. "Leave now, or I'm calling the police and having you charged with trespassing." She raised her voice so everyone could hear. "And the rest of you standing around watching should know this is exactly why we have a resident committee, to handle situations like this when security isn't around." A woman sitting under an umbrella called out, "Maybe just let him explain?" "There's nothing to explain," the blonde woman insisted. "He already admitted he doesn't have a key card and didn't sign a lease. Case closed." The man checked his watch and frowned. His daughter's game started in 45 minutes and he had promised he wouldn't miss this one. He'd already missed 2 because of work. He pressed a button on his phone and held it to his ear. "Who are you calling?" the woman demanded. "The police? Because I already have them on speed dial." "No," he said calmly as he waited for the call to connect. "I'm calling the property manager." "Perfect," the woman exclaimed, looking smugly satisfied. "The manager will confirm that you need to leave immediately." Just then his call connected. "Hey, it's me," he said into the phone. "I'm at the Riverside pool doing the furniture inspection, and we have a situation. Could you come down here? Right away?" He paused, listening. "Yes, right now would be good, thanks." He disconnected the call and slipped his phone back into his pocket. "The property manager is on the way," he announced, not just to the woman, but to everyone watching. "They'll sort this out in a few minutes." The woman crossed her arms over her chest, looking incredibly pleased with herself. "Good. They'll escort you out properly." The man just shook his head slightly. "We'll see." The tension at the pool area could be cut with a knife. Several residents had formed small clusters, whispering among themselves as they watched the standoff. The woman stood with her arms crossed, tapping her foot impatiently on the hot concrete. The man with the clipboard leaned against the fence, checking his watch every few seconds. "My daughter has a big soccer game today," he mentioned casually, to no one in particular. "She's playing goalie for the first time. Been practicing all week in our backyard." "I don't care about your personal life," the woman snapped. "Stop trying to make small talk like you belong here." A teenage boy who had been recording the whole thing on his phone piped up. "This is going straight to TikTok, #pooldrama." His mother quickly shushed him, looking embarrassed. The hot summer sun beat down on everyone, making the situation even more uncomfortable. A family with young kids decided they'd had enough and started packing up their colorful beach towels and inflatable toys. "Sorry about all this," the man with the clipboard said to them as they prepared to leave. "The pool's usually much more peaceful," the woman scoffed loudly. "Don't apologize for my community. You don't speak for Riverside." Just then, the pool gate swung open. A woman in her early 40s hurried in, slightly out of breath. She wore neat business casual clothes despite the weekend heat. Navy slacks and a light blue blouse with Riverside Apartments embroidered on the pocket. Her office lanyard bounced against her chest as she rushed over. "I came as quickly as I could," she said, scanning the scene with wide eyes. She looked first at the man with the clipboard, then at the angry woman, then at the crowd of onlookers. "What's going on here?" Before the man could answer, the blonde woman stepped forward eagerly. "I'm so glad you're here," she said with obvious relief. "I found this man wandering around our pool without a key card. He admits he didn't sign a lease and he refuses to leave when asked. I was just about to call the police." The property manager's eyes widened even further. She looked at the man with the clipboard, who gave her a small, tired smile and shrug. "I see," the property manager said slowly. She took a deep breath before addressing the blonde woman directly. "Ma'am, I think there's been a misunderstanding." "That's what he keeps saying," the woman replied with an eye roll. "But the rules are clear. Residents only. He's not a resident." The property manager cleared her throat. "Actually, you're right. He's not a resident." The blonde woman's face lit up with vindication. "Thank you. Finally, someone with authority who understands the importance of security." "He's not a resident," the property manager continued, her voice growing firmer, "because he's the owner of the entire property." The pool area went completely silent. Even the splashing from the small fountain at the shallow end seemed to pause. The woman's smug expression froze, then slowly melted into confusion. "What did you say?" she asked, her voice suddenly much smaller. "This gentleman owns Riverside Apartments," the property manager repeated, gesturing toward the man with the clipboard. All 200 units, the gym, the clubhouse, and yes, this pool where we're standing right now. The blonde woman's mouth opened and closed several times, but no words came out. Her face began to turn a deep shade of red that had nothing to do with the summer heat. The man with the clipboard stepped forward, extending his hand to the property manager. "Thanks for coming down so quickly, I appreciate it." "Of course, sir." The property manager nodded respectfully. "I'm sorry about this misunderstanding." The woman finally found her voice, though it was now shaky and uncertain. "But you can't be the owner. The owner is a big property development company." "My company," the man explained gently. "I started it 15 years ago. Riverside is our newest acquisition. Bought it last year." He gestured around the pool area. "We've been making improvements ever since. Those lounge chairs you're sitting on just delivered this week. That's what I was checking on today." The teenage boy who had been recording everything whispered an impressed "no way" loud enough for everyone to hear. The woman's friend, who had been watching everything unfold from her lounge chair, now stood up and quickly gathered her things. "I think I should go," she mumbled, clearly not wanting to be associated with what was happening. "Wait," the blonde woman called to her friend, panic edging into her voice. "Don't leave me here." But her friend just gave her an apologetic look and hurried toward the exit gate. The property manager addressed the remaining pool-goers. "Everyone, I'm sorry for the disturbance. Please return to enjoying your Saturday. The pool will remain open until 10 p.m. as usual." People began to disperse, though most moved slowly, still watching the drama unfold while pretending not to. Parents who had been shielding their children now relaxed, some even smiling at the unexpected turn of events. The man checked his watch again. "I need to get going soon. My daughter's game starts in 30 minutes. The blonde woman stood rooted to the spot, her face cycling through a range of emotions: embarrassment, disbelief, and horror. I didn't know," she stammered. "How could you have?" he replied reasonably. "We haven't met before, but I assumed." She trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. "Yes," he said quietly, "you did." An uncomfortable silence stretched between them. Around the pool, life was returning to normal. Kids splashed in the water again. A group of young adults resumed their volleyball game in the shallow end. Music from someone's portable speaker played softly in the background. The woman finally spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry." The man nodded, accepting her apology with a simple, "Thank you." The property manager, who had been standing awkwardly to the side, stepped forward. "Sir, did you finish your inspection of the new furniture?" "Almost," he replied, picking up his clipboard from where he'd set it down. "Just need to check the cabana area and I'll be done." The blonde woman remained frozen in place, watching as the owner of her apartment complex, the man she had just tried to have removed from his own property, walked calmly toward the cabana with his property manager, discussing upcoming improvements to the pool area as if nothing had happened. Behind her, she heard whispers and knew without looking that she had become the subject of conversation around the pool. Her perfect Saturday afternoon had turned into a nightmare of her own making. By Sunday morning, everyone at Riverside Apartments knew what had happened at the pool. The video taken by the teenage boy had made its rounds in the community chat group. Some residents had even shared it to neighborhood social media pages with captions like, "When you try to kick the owner out of his own pool," and "Property owner gets ID checked at his own apartment complex." The blonde woman hadn't left her apartment since the incident. Her window blinds remained tightly closed as she avoided the curious stares and whispers she knew would follow her around the complex. Her phone had been buzzing nonstop with texts and messages from other residents, some expressing sympathy, others barely hiding their amusement at her public mistake. She sat on her couch, staring at the draft email on her laptop screen. She had been working on an apology to send to the management office for hours, writing and rewriting, struggling to find the right words. How do you apologize for something like this? For the assumptions she had made based on nothing but appearance? "I deeply regret my behavior at the pool yesterday," she typed, then deleted it. Too formal. "I'm so sorry for what happened," she tried again, Too vague. Her friend who had abandoned her at the pool finally responded to her texts around noon. People are talking about it everywhere, the text read. Maybe lay low for a few days until something else happens and people forget. But the woman knew it wouldn't be that easy. She lived in a community where she would regularly run into the very person she had humiliated herself in front of. The person who ironically owned the roof over her head. She glanced at the lease agreement on her coffee table. She had only moved in 3 weeks ago, signing a 1-year contract. Would he kick her out? Could he? She wasn't sure what the laws were about eviction, but the thought made her stomach twist with anxiety. Meanwhile, across town, the property owner was sitting on aluminum bleachers, cheering as his daughter's soccer team finished their game. They had lost 2-1, but his daughter had made several impressive saves as goalie. "Did you see when I blocked that corner kick, Dad?" His daughter asked excitedly as they walked to the car, her cleats clicking against the pavement. "Sure did, kiddo. That was world class," he said, giving her a side hug. "Hey, how about ice cream to celebrate your first game as goalie?" As they sat at the ice cream shop, his phone buzzed with a message from his property manager. He hesitated before checking it, wanting to stay present with his daughter but wondering if it was about yesterday's pool incident. "Go ahead, Dad," his daughter said, noticing his glance at the phone. "I know you're always working." "Thanks, sweetheart. Just one quick message, then phone goes away," he promised, opening the text. The message contained a link to the community chat group where the pool video was circulating along with a note. "Should we address this somehow? People are talking." He sighed and put the phone away without responding. He'd deal with it later. Right now was ice cream time with his daughter. Back at Riverside Apartments, the property manager was fielding calls and emails from concerned residents. Some were checking if the woman would face consequences. Others wanted to make sure the manager knew they had nothing to do with her behavior. A few were even suggesting the complex should hold some kind of community event to address what they called the elephant in the room. "No, we're not evicting anyone," the property manager explained for the 5th time that day on a call. "The owner doesn't operate that way. He understands it was a misunderstanding." After hanging up, she rubbed her temples, feeling a headache coming on. The incident had exposed an uncomfortable truth about their community that many residents were now grappling with: how quickly assumptions were made based on appearance, and how those assumptions could lead to hurtful confrontations. That evening, the owner called his property manager while driving home from his daughter's friend's house, where he'd dropped her off for a sleepover. "We need to turn this into something positive," he said after they discussed the day's fallout. "This isn't the first time something like this has happened to me, and it won't be the last." "What are you thinking?" the manager asked, surprised by his calm approach to the situation. "We already had that community mixer planned for next weekend. Let's use it as an opportunity to bring everyone together. No finger-pointing, no blame. Just neighbors getting to know each other better." The property manager made notes as they talked through his ideas. By the end of the call, they had a plan that would address the incident without singling anyone out or creating more division. On Monday morning, all residents received an email announcing an upcoming community gathering. The email made no mention of the pool incident, but emphasized the importance of community, connection, and belonging. Blonde woman read the email on her phone while sitting at her kitchen table, still in her pajamas despite it being nearly noon. She hadn't gone to work, calling in sick with a vague excuse about a stomach bug. The truth was she couldn't face people yet. The shame was still too raw. When she got to the part about the community gathering, her stomach churned. The thought of showing her face there, of potentially running into the owner, made her want to hide even more. But a small part of her knew she would eventually have to face what happened. Her phone buzzed with another text from a neighbor she barely knew. "Did you see the video has over 10,000 views now? Someone shared it on Twitter." She groaned and tossed the phone aside. How had her life come to this? 3 weeks ago, she had been so proud to move into this luxury community, excited about the amenities and the status that came with the address. Now she was the complex pariah, known only as that woman from the pool video. Across the complex, life went on. Children played in the courtyard. Residents walked their dogs along the carefully landscaped paths, The pool was crowded again with people enjoying the summer heat. The only difference was the conversations happening in lowered voices, all centered around the same topic: the woman who had tried to kick the owner out of his own pool, and what would happen when they inevitably came face to face again. The community room at Riverside Apartments had never been so full. Nearly every seat was taken, with latecomers standing along the walls. The property manager had set up a buffet table with finger foods and drinks, but most people seemed more interested in looking around the room than eating. Everyone was searching for two particular faces. The owner arrived exactly on time, dressed in business casual attire, a simple button-down shirt and khaki pants. He looked different from the man in shorts and a t-shirt from the pool incident, but everyone recognized him immediately. A hush fell over the room as he walked to the front, shaking hands and exchanging greetings with residents along the way. The blonde woman was nowhere to be seen. "Should we wait a few more minutes before starting?" the property manager asked the owner quietly as they stood near the podium. He checked his watch. "Let's give it another 5 minutes. I think everyone who's coming is probably already here." What neither of them knew was that the blonde woman was currently sitting in her car in the parking lot, trying to work up the courage to go inside. She had changed outfits 3 times before leaving her apartment, finally settling on a conservative blue dress that she hoped sent the right message: respectful, apologetic, but not trying too hard. Her hands gripped the steering wheel as she watched more residents enter the building. She had spent the entire week dreading this moment. The thought of walking into a room full of people who had either seen the incident in person or watched the video made her stomach twist with anxiety. "Just go in," she whispered to herself. "Say what you need to say and then you can leave." Inside the community room, the owner stepped up to the podium and tapped the microphone. The chatter died down as everyone turned their attention to him. "Good evening, everyone," he began with a warm smile. "Thank you all for coming tonight. It's wonderful to see such a great turnout." He paused, scanning the room. "For those who don't know me, I'm the owner of Riverside Apartments. I purchased this property about a year ago because I saw great potential in both the buildings and the community." Just then, the door at the back of the room opened quietly. The blonde woman slipped in, trying to be as inconspicuous as possible, but in a room full of people waiting for drama, nothing went unnoticed. Heads turned, whispers erupted, and she felt every single pair of eyes on her as she found an empty spot against the back wall. The owner noticed her too, giving her a small nod of acknowledgement before continuing his speech. "As many of you know, there was an incident at our pool last weekend," he said, addressing the elephant in the room directly. Several people shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "I could stand here and talk about that specific event, but I'd rather focus on something more important: the community we're building here together." He stepped out from behind the podium, choosing to stand closer to the residents. "I grew up in a neighborhood where nobody knew their neighbors. People lived side by side for years without ever learning each other's names. When I started buying properties, I promised myself I would create communities, not just places to live." The blonde woman stared at the floor, unable to look up as he spoke. She could feel curious glances still being thrown her way. "The truth is," the owner continued, "we all make assumptions about people we don't know. Sometimes those assumptions are harmless, sometimes they hurt. But the only way to move past assumptions is to actually get to know each other." He gestured around the room. "Look around. These are the people you share walls with, the people you pass in the hallways, the people who hear your music or your baby crying or your dog barking. We're all connected whether we realize it or not." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. People began to nod along with his words. So tonight isn't about dwelling on mistakes or pointing fingers. It's about moving forward as neighbors who respect each other. It's about building the kind of community where everyone feels they belong. The owner then announced several new initiatives: monthly community gatherings, a resident committee focused on inclusivity, and sensitivity training for all staff and resident volunteers. As he spoke, the tension in the room gradually eased. People began to relax, some even smiling and nudging their neighbors when he mentioned improvements they had been wanting. When the formal presentation ended, residents broke into small groups, mingling over food and drinks. The property manager made her way to the blonde woman who was still standing alone by the wall. "I'm glad you came," the manager said kindly. "It took courage." The woman nodded, her eyes still tracking the owner as he chatted with a group of elderly residents across the room. "Is he going to kick me out?" she asked in a low voice. "What?" "No," the manager reassured her. "That's not who he is. He actually asked specifically if you would be here tonight." The woman's eyes widened with surprise. "He did?" "He believes in second chances," the manager said simply. "We all make mistakes." As the evening progressed, the woman noticed something strange happening. People who had been avoiding her all week were now making eye contact, even offering small smiles. A family with 2 young children who had been at the pool during the incident stopped to chat briefly with her about the weather. It wasn't much, but it felt like the first crack in the wall of shame that had surrounded her. Finally, as the crowd began to thin, she saw her opportunity. The owner was alone for a moment, refilling his water glass at the drink table. Taking a deep breath, she approached him. "Excuse me," she said softly, her voice wavering slightly. "I need to apologize to you properly. What I did was inexcusable." He turned to face her, his expression neither angry nor pitying, just attentive. "I made assumptions based on nothing that matters," she continued, the words tumbling out now. "I've spent all week trying to figure out how to say sorry, but nothing seems enough." The owner set down his water glass. "Thank you for your apology," he said simply. "I appreciate you saying that. Are you going to evict me?" she asked, the question that had kept her awake for nights finally spoken aloud. He looked genuinely surprised. "No, of course not. That wouldn't solve anything. But after what I did," she began. "Look," he interrupted gently. "I've been on the receiving end of assumptions my whole life, even after I bought my first property, even after I bought my 5th. It happens in luxury stores, at valet parking, in restaurants, and yes, sometimes, at my own properties." Her face flushed with shame as he continued. "The question isn't whether people make mistakes. We all do. The question is what we learn from them," he said. "So what did you learn?" She thought for a moment before answering. "That I had biases I didn't even realize were there," she admitted, "and that I need to do better." He nodded, a small smile forming. "That's a good start." As they continued talking, other residents watched from across the room. What they witnessed wasn't just an apology, but the beginning of something more meaningful. A genuine conversation between 2 people who had moved past an ugly incident to find common ground. By the end of the night, something had shifted at Riverside Apartments. It wasn't perfect, and not every resident had experienced a change of heart. But seeds had been planted for a stronger, more inclusive community, one where people might think twice before making assumptions about where others belonged.